Now, today is the 24th of May 2017, and I'm Sharon Slater, and I'm interviewing Tommy Roberts on the life on the Shannon Estuary. So, first question I have is, how long have you been living in this area?
Since I was born here, yeah.
And have your family been living here as well?
My father before me, would have been living here as well, yeah, and grandfather. On my father's side, back as far as we can trace, have been living here. And on my mother's side, actually our ancestors would have come from here as well, but in the meantime they had moved up as far as Patrickswell, the other end of the parish. And but she ended up back down here, and so.
What was your mother's maiden name?
O'Brien. Yeah.
And what did your family do here?
Farming and fishing. That was the life. Yeah.
And
a small farm like medium, about 40 acres roughly around that. And the fishing was the other side of it then.
And you went out fishing yourself?
I did. I suppose I would have been after leaving school. It would have been before I kind of went out fishing. Yeah.
And who did you fish with?
I would have fished with local Jimmy Gearan. You've probably spoken to him already. And Jim Roberts, my cousin. And I would have, to a lesser extent, then I would have fished a bit with I suppose Liam Coughlin, and a bit with actually quite a bit then Daniel O'Connell, and man that was up the road here. I fished with him. Mike Cronin, another man. Both of those, Daniel O'Connell and Mike Cronin, would have been, I suppose, a few years younger than me. Whereas all the other men would have been older than me, apart from Jim would be roughly the same age. They would have been, and Richard Kiley as well. Richard Kiley, other men would have fished a good bit with.
What kind of fishing did you do?
So it'd be all salmon fishing, yeah. And
it was all with the net?
Drift netting, drift net salmon fishing, yeah.
And when you went out, you spent hours on the river?
Roughly, when you go out, I suppose about 2-3 hours before low water, and you'd come back then, we'll say, just after high water, the top of the tide. So you'd roughly spend 9 hours. Of a trip out would be about 9 hours.
And when you were out on the boat, what did you eat and how did you cook?
Most of the time you carry sandwiches with you and stuff, that's you carry out what you'd eat, Sometimes I used to do that. I don't think I ever did it. Actually, put into one of the islands and boil a kettle or that. Make tea. But an awful lot of the lads used to do that. Yeah.
And the islands, there were huts on some of the islands.
On some of the islands there were. Now the huts would have been. Most of those would have been gone. That would have been before my time, all there would have been, there'd only been a few sticks and stakes is all I would remember of them, but some of the older men would remember the huts being on the islands. There was one island there, Key Island, that used to be used by the pilots. They used to have a base there, and there'd be a Western pilot would bring the boat as far as the Bunratty River, and then they'd change out there, and there'd be a pilot from there to Limerick, and the same coming down, a pilot bring her from Limerick down to there, and they'd change over there, and the rest of the while I would take her down the rest of the way to Scatteray. That practice ended, I don't know the exact year, like, but it would have been a good bit before my time, you know. Then there were some of the other islands as well, the fishermen themselves, some of the fishermen from, let's say, further away from town and that used to have huts. There again, it would have been a little bit before my time. I wouldn't quite remember, you know, that being in practice, you know.
And when you were fishing, can you remember what the biggest fish you caught was?
The biggest I would have seen, or I'd say would have been 12 or 13 pounds would have been the biggest I would have, caught. No, that would have been, I suppose even in my time there would have been bigger caught, but I didn't ever catch them, you know. And then now, having, you know, the older people, my father and dad, I'd have heard them tell, you know, talking about salmon being caught like regularly. They were over 20 pounds and that, you know. I would have never, you know, I didn't ever see that, you know. Yeah.
And what kinds of fish did you just fish for salmon, or were there any other kinds of fish?
Well, we were mainly, we used to be fishing for salmon. Now sometimes, alright, after the salmon season, I remember my father used to go out and they'd go for fluke, you know. Now a lot of the time during the salmon season you'd be catching those and you'd be bringing those in the net as well, you know. You'd bring them home to eat them yourself. They wouldn't be, whereas the salmon you'd be selling them. The fluke you just eat them yourself, you know.
And who did you sell the salmon to?
For the most part, in the earlier years, we said when my father was alive, and that there used to be a merchant come. I think it was from Cork. It was Carr's. I think it was the Dockers are there. The old Dockers are still there. William Carr, I think was the name of the company, and one of their drivers used to come in a small truck, and he'd have a wee kind of a gantry that would slide out it was like, I suppose, probably wasn't the highest pickup, but it was something similar to one of them, you know, and it was just a little small little gantry that he'd hang scales on, and he'd weigh all the fish on that then and tot them all up and pack them on their backs in boxes. He'd have boxes of ice, then he'd put ice over them, you know, and stack them all up, and at the end of every week then he'd come on and he'd have it all, he'd get paid then at the end of the week. But that stopped then as the years were going on through there again I don't remember the exact year that stopped. Probably coming into the 80s maybe, because the fish stocks, you know, there wasn't enough fish kind of really to keep him going. And after that then we used to take the fish into Cusicks inside in Limerick in the Dock Road. And obviously then there'd always be private people as well who would buy fish off, you know, just ordinary people would come on and they'd buy fish. So that's the way
And when you were out fishing in the earlier years, was there any folklore or tradition that went along with the fishing? Like, were the boats blessed, or could red-headed people go near them? You know, things like that.
I suppose, there was. My father would never have had any. He wouldn't have, you know, had much time for any of you know, he wouldn't have been a superstitious person, so I wouldn't have really heard much of that. The only thing there was always a bottle of holy water alright in every boat. That was always was that. Other superstitions I would have not really didn't know. No, I didn't. That's not to say I would have heard. But never took much notice, you know, I never took any notice, like, yeah.
And did any of the fishermen have nicknames?
They did, yeah, they did. All the older, Yes, all of the older men would have had nicknames and stuff. Yeah, they would have had. Yeah.
Can you remember any of them?
Yeah, there was. I suppose Split the Wind. There's another the little man. He was a Dave Enright. He used to live just up here. He was a real hardy character, like, but he was very small, very witty, very character like. He was always. I always remember him as the little man. My own father, I suppose they used to call him Bahal. I don't know why, but that was his. Jeez, the most. No, I haven't forgotten. There was kind of another man used to call him Magnet. Was another fella. The General. Jigs. Mickey Dip. The Slash. There was a lot, yeah. I did come if I was thinking, yeah, but there was a lot, yeah. Yeah.
And did you have any interaction with the bailiffs, with the water bailiffs come down?
They used, yeah. Well, we'd have as little interaction with them as possible. They would come down, yeah, but like I said, we wouldn't have much. Try to have as little interaction with them as possible. Yeah. They wouldn't be very popular.
And did you used to do reed cutting as well?
In my younger, I did cut a bit of reed for a number of years, but not too many. I suppose maybe if I spent 4 or 5 years cutting reed. After that, then I started teaching, and that kind of took up most of my time. And I went away to sea then for a few years as well. So I kind of, I went away from the reed cutting completely.
When you did cut the reed, where did you cut it?
Well, I used to cut it all across the other side of the Shannon, up the Bunratty River and down near Saints Island, further down near Shannon Town, as you go down towards Shannon, and at the back of Greens Island, which would be out around the mouth of the Bunratty River. And used to bring some of it across the river to my across to this side then in the boat. But a lot of the times it was easier to take it up the Bunratty River and unload it there, because you could drive, you would access, whereas when I bring it brought it home to this side of the river, especially in the winter time, it was impossible to bring it up through the fields. They get very wet in the winter time. So, but I'd bring some of it across, depending on the weather, like, and how easy it was to get in or out behind.
And when you were cutting it, who did you sell it to, or did you use it?
I used to use the most of it. The first, I ended up selling a lot of reed to, but I used to sell it, or initially, but then I sold a load of it to a cousin of mine, or a man that was married to a cousin of mine, and he wanted to attach kind of a shed that was onto a house he had bought out in Ballinity. So he bought the reed off of me, but then he couldn't locate anyone to do the attachment for him. So he said, like, would you not, do you know anything about it? Would you try it yourself, And I said, sure I will, and so I did, and once I finished that, someone else asked me, and that was it. Like I didn't stop since with it, and so that I still cut the reed. I still cut reed in after that, and I'd cut it and I'd use what I'd cut, and when I'd be sure I'd buy some more. Then if the lads that were cutting around. But eventually I stopped cutting myself altogether because you couldn't do everything,
And when you started thatching, did somebody teach you how to do that?
No, not really. Back then there was a lot of old houses around this area that were falling down at that time, It was easy to do a bit of investigating as to how they were done. And I suppose I read whatever I could find out of it. There wasn't much Irish literature, but actually English. There was a lot of literature written in England that some books I was able to get my hands on, which were very detailed on thatching. And between the two of them, I was able to get a fair idea of the way it went. And I just kept at it then until I kind of, got it right. I suppose by the time I was halfway through that first house that I was thatching, I kind of had it. It's the thing about the thatching is it's not. People think thatching is very difficult and all that. It's not difficult to learn how to do it. It's actually very easy. The difficulty with thatching is the speed at which you do it with. You learn how to thatch in a couple of weeks, but you won't build up a proficiency and a speed that will enable you to thatch a house in a reasonable amount of time. It'll take you years to get that level of, I don't know what you call it, so that when you start off initially, or when you're learning initially, you're measuring everything and then you're gone a bit of the way and you have to go back over it and you have to take it because you're after misjudging it, and if you get it wrong at the start, you're never going to make it right at the top. You have to have it right coming up at the bottom, and it takes a while. But once, as the years go by, you just do it. It's a bit like cycling a bike, I suppose. You eventually learn. You don't have to think about it, but while you're learning and while you're thinking about it, you're very slow at it, and you're not really. It's obviously you're not making much money while that's happening. But as soon as you get rid of that and you're able to do it without having to think about what you're doing, or it starts to come flow naturally to you, well then you start to build up a good bit of speed, and that's really that's I suppose the big secret to it is having the patience and the tenacity to stick at it for long enough that you kind of crack that into it,
And can you tell me about the process of thatching? What did you have to do first?
When you go, we'll say, to thatch a roof, thatch any roof. If you're coming into a house, we'll say an old house, that needs retouching, that has been, we'll say, thatched before, it's probably there hundreds of years. The chances are, if it's a long ways gone, if it's been neglected to a degree, or if it should have been maybe thatched a few years previous, you will have to have a look at it and first thing you're going to figure, how deep down am I going to have to go here, how much of this old roof am I going to have to take off until I can get down to a level bed all across it, because some parts of the roof will actually be quite good, more parts they'll be very worn and holes will have developed, and if you just went up, you can't just go up on some of it anyway and thatch, because some of it will be so rotten that it would sag away underneath it. You need to take that off and get that down to a sound base. But then there'll be other stuff which is a sound base, which will be pretty sound already, which will be a good bit above that. So you have to bring it all down to the same level. But you're not going to do all that at the same time, because you come along in what they call strakes, of about roughly 3 foot in width along the roof. And it'll take you 2 to 3 weeks to get from one side of the roof to the other. You can't strip the whole lot, because then unless you want to go spending days spreading tarpaulins over it to stop the rain from going through it in the meantime. So you need to kind of figure out, how am I going to get start to take the proper depth off it, bearing in mind that all along the roof that you're going to have to take account of the dips and hollows that you're going to encounter all the way across. Once you have that done, then you just go up and strip down about, we'll say, your first straight, the width of your first strake, 3 feet plus the ladder. Dig that down to your depth, and make up a ridge roll first. We'll go on a new ridge roll on the top, which is about a diameter of about roughly 5 or 6 inches.
What is that made of?
It's made out of the reed as well, tied very tightly, every foot apart, and it forms a solid lengthwise member, if you like, just underneath the ridge. It allows you to pin the two sides of the roof of the ridge together. The scallops from one side will go into it, and the scallops from the other side will go into it, and make a single unit out to hold the ridge together at the top. If you didn't have that, the ridge would tend to, after a few years, it would tend to pull apart and separate, So when you've that done, then go down and start off your first leaves layer at the bottom. Usually would take about 6 bundles of reed to do that for a 3 foot wide stretch, and you'd pin that down then with 2 rows of scallops.
What are the scallops made of?
The scallops would be either hazel or willow, cut about 28 inches or 27 or 28 inches long, pointed at each end, and you can bend them into so they look like staples. So you will use one of them or 2 of them as stretchers, which will run horizontal and laid on top of the reed, and they'll be running horizontal, whereas the reed is running vertical. And the scallops then are driven down, one leg at each side of those stretchers. They're driven down, and they pin them down. They pin the stretchers on top of the layer of reed, and you put 2 of those rows on the first layer, and the first row of those scallops would be about 20 inches up, 20 inches up from the outside of the eave, from the outside edge. And next thing, another layer goes on top of that, roughly the same 6 or 7 sheaves again. This time you start dressing up the face work, and when that face work is dressed, it'll have come up, say, about the 18 to 20 inches, almost as far as the first row of stretchers, which are pinning down the underneath layer of reed. You'd be careful never to dress up past them, because you're thinning out
And when you're dressing up, it's just making it into that shape.
Making the slope of the roof, dressing each independent, each straw of reed takes up its place then, and they're all staggered, just each layer, so that causes, and when then when that first layer of face work, we'll say, is on, that's pinned down with just 1 row of scallops, then the same distance up from the edge of the face work, about 18 to 20 inches. And when those are driven down tight, they should just splay the edge of the face work just a little bit. It should never be. You don't ever want to see it squeeze, the face work squeeze tight, like really tight together, because it causes a kind of a capillary action where the water will actually hold and be held by the straws or reed. Whereas if they're splayed ever so slightly, splayed apart, the drops of water run down off each one of them, and they dry off very quickly. And that for that reason as well, the coarser the reed you have, up to a point, the coarser the reed you have, the longer it will last, because there's more air gaps between it. Very fine reed will almost form an airtight, a very tight layer, and it actually serves to hold the water rather than shed it, And you continue on then with that process all the way up along till you reach the top. On an average roof, that would be about maybe 12, 13 layers all the way till you get to the top. When you get to the top, then on the last layer before the ridge, you'd put 2 rows of scallops on that as well. 1 row into the roof, the upper row into the ridge roll. Then on the ridge itself, you would use probably the same amount of sheaves, maybe 6 or 7, but upside down with the tops facing down the roof. And you would use after leveling across the top, you'd use top row scallops, and they'll go down through as well and into the ridge roll. Then down about 16 to 18 inches down, and the next row will go, and about 3 inches below that another row again. So you'll have 3 rows of fixings on the ridge, and then usually you just put an X in between the 2 top rows of scallops. That gives just a little bit of a pattern, And when that's one strake finished, then that'll be about 3 feet wide. So you clear off your next section of roof, move your ladder along, start the process again, so on until you all the way across the roof.
And how long would it take to do an average bungalow, small cottage roof?
Well, on your own, we'll say you do. Well, and these days now, we'll say a fine summer's day, a long day. If you were to push yourself hard, you could possibly do up to 3 strakes. That would be 9 feet of the roof. But if you're doing that for maybe, you might stick that for maybe 4 days. You knock out, but then you start to burn out after that. Then But if you were to do 2 strakes a day, that'd be about 6 feet a day. That's a comfortable, for me anyway. That's a comfortable pace, and you keep doing. You'd work away with that without kind of feeling like that you were killing yourself after a few days.
And when the roof itself, is there wood down first? Is there planks, or how's the first layer?
On the roof itself, we'll say you'd have rafters, much as you have in any house. The only difference on those old houses, the rafters would be set up in couples, as in you'd have your 2 rafters joined at the top, and they'd be an average of about 1 metre apart, whereas in a modern house, like, your rafters will be 16-inch centres, And then those rafters would, in the older houses anyway, they'd be just rough poles, Some of them they'd only be roughly shaped. Maybe the bark would be hacked off with a hatchet, like, and the limbs, the smaller limbs, hacked off. They'd try and put a flat side, to the top, like where they'd be put the flattest side, where they'd be putting the battens on, and just give them a bit of shape up at the top, or they'd be joining them up at the apex. They'd have a dowel going through their wooden peg, then they'd be joined with a wooden peg. Then about halfway down, they'd have a collar coming across between the 2 of them, wood pinned in with wooden pegs as well. On top of those, then they'd have the battens, which would be running horizontally. They'd be fairly close together, and they'd be made up of just smaller branches, really, and they'd be just pinned on with horseshoe nails. And you'd meet a lot of the really old houses. They'd be disintegrated years ago, and all you really have is just the weight of the roof keeping the whole thing in position. When they'd have those down, when those battens would be down, then the first layer of the reed, or in the houses around here, the first layer of reed would be sewed on with sugan. It would be a rope, made up out of hay. In later years, they would have had the spun yarn, which is rope made out of jute or hemp, But the real old ones would be the or I suppose maybe the poorer households that would have had, all they would have had like was the Sugan. But it had done the job. You'd have houses there that are hundreds of years old and that's still there, that's still what's holding them up, you know.
How many houses in this area would have had thatched roofs?
How far back do you want to go? In the early, going back, I suppose, when I was growing up, that we'll say, what, 45 years ago, there would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd say around this area there would have been at least 15, just in this small, you know, we'll say from coming down over the hill road here down to this area, there would have been in the region of 15 thatched houses. And now there's 1, 2, 3, and then, well, this one wouldn't have been here then. And there's another one up the hill road which wouldn't have been there then. There's 4 now. 2 of them that were always there, 2 real old ones, and there's 2 new ones which are done thatched from new, you know.
And is it becoming more popular again?
It is, well, it's economics, like it's because it's so costly. It's cost prohibitive, like, so it's for that reason. It's not like there's loads of people would like to have it, but between the cost of it and I suppose there was it going back a while back, not so many years ago, that there wasn't any vet, you know, on thatching. Now there is, you know. So that's really it's going to hammer it completely, because the pace of work is so slow on that you can't. No matter how hard you try, you're never going to make. You know, you're never going to really make a lot of money out of it. And if you're going to come into the realms of charging, we'll say, if you have to keep VAT invoices and all that, you need an accountant to do that for you. Doing work like that, you're never going to make enough that you can keep that sort of an operation going. We're going to be able to pay accountants and pay for keeping VAT receipts up to date. And then it heaps that some of that burden is obviously going to pass on to the person that you're doing the work for. It's expensive enough as it is, like. It's so cost wise, it's never going to make a comeback. Like no. And then the other thing that's going to hammer it is insurance. It's the insurance companies got down on them, like, so there's
How long would a thatched roof last?
I suppose that can vary a lot, but the biggest variable, or the biggest thing that it would be dependent on, is the pitch of the roof. If you have a good slope off the roof, if it's made something, we'll say a slope of 55 degrees, which would be something similar to the one here, you would be expecting to get at least 30 years out of it, 30 to 40 years. A roof, then if you drop the pitch back down to about, something around 45 degrees or that, you would be looking more in the line of 16 to 20 years. There again, depend if you could keep the boards off it. It would, when it gets after about maybe 15 years, when it starts to get a bit vulnerable, it would last quite a long time after that. But the boards take an awful liking to it then. And if they could tear us under, like, and if they took a shine to it, they could tear us under in a number, in a short number of years. Like, you'd have to do it. The crows, especially, like, if the place is quiet for some reason, and if they have reason to be coming around, if there's a farmyard nearby or something where they're coming for feeding, they'll use the roof as a playground, you know, and they'll dig through it just for the sake of something to do. They can ruin a thatch roof, an old thatch roof now that's fairly soft. Like they can play hell with it. Yeah. But if you could keep them off of it, you know, a roof of, we'll say, with a pitch of about 45 degrees, yeah, you'd knock out 20 years out of it. Now the ridge would have to be done about every 10 years, because the scallops along the top of the ridge, they'll rot off it, and obviously the top row reed, because it's not face work, like it's a straight linter reed, we're not going to last as long. So, but if you have a row, usually when you finish that off, you put a row of chicken wire along it, you know, and that stops the birds and that from pulling it asunder when the scallops rot, and you get about 10 years out of it then. But if you didn't have that wire on, you'd be talking of about 4 or 5 years, you know.
And is it just birds that would go up into it, or would there be other animals or insects that would?
I suppose that you could have insects, all right, yeah, but nothing else really. It's all to be birds, yeah. There are people say rats and mice, but I've never seen rats and mice any more than you would in any other house, in a thatched house, you know. That's not to say that they wouldn't be in there. Like they could, like, but they're not that fond of the reed. Now, if a house is thatched with the straw, where there can be some, I suppose, maybe element of feeding left in it, they'd have a greater fondness for the straw, but the reed, they don't like it that much.
I think that's about it for my questions. If there's anything else you'd like to add?
Alright, no, not really. Don't know a lot more I can say about it. Apart from, like, it's, I suppose, from the point of view of working at it, it's a lovely, like, while you're up there doing it, like, it's a lovely job to be doing, because it's out in the open, and it's quite pleasant, and you know, you get a great old feeling of satisfaction when you have a roof thatched, you know. But unfortunately, with the way things are going, you know, with I suppose it's just, yeah, it's hard to see it, you know, it's hard to see into the future, like how it's going to survive in modern times, you know.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me there.
No bother.